First, it's intimidate. They will intimidate you by phone calls, by emails, by articles about you, criticizing you, and the objective is to shut you up. Put your head down under the wall and stop talking about Israel. If intimidation doesn't work, they move to the second level of their strategy, which is to isolate you. If they can't intimidate you, they will intimidate others to isolate you. So you'll be invited to speak at a conference. They'll target the conference organizers to have you disinvited. Your PhD has been accepted by the university. They'll target the university to have your PhD revoked. They can't isolate you. They go to the third level, which is incriminate. They'll try and use the law against you.
In our previous program, we have focused predominantly on Christian Zionism and dispensationalism, also anti-Semitism. But we cannot escape talking at least a little bit about Christian Zionism and contribution of Christians, and I would say some Christians, to this confusion when it comes to what anti-Semitism is and what anti-Semitism is not. I myself heard enough to know that so often Christians who are very much in love with a modern-day Israel, who see a prophetic, eschatological role in a geographical Israel of today that was born in 1948 and beyond, calling, labeling other Christians who do not agree with them as being anti-Semitic. There is no question that somewhere there is some wrong theology playing a significant role. Why is that so?
And turn a blind eye when they see Israel committing genocide, but will speak out against Russia in the Ukraine, or declare that genocide is taking place in Sudan, but it's not taking place in Gaza. I've spent much of my life examining Christian Zionism and why Christians in the past and in many senses today support the state of Israel. And I wrote 2 books on the subject, Zion's Christian Soldiers and Christian Zionism Roadmap to Armageddon. To answer your question, I would basically say that if Christians support what Israel is doing today, it reflects a very shallow, immature Christian faith. Christian Zionism is an oxymoron. You can be a Christian or a Zionist, but you can't be both. It's like saying I'm a Christian racist. Yes, Christians did defend apartheid in South Africa. They pulled out a few verses from the Old Testament to justify the segregation of the races, but it led to supremacism, it led to exploitation, it led to the theft of land and subjugation of the indigenous people. It has done the same in every colonial enterprise around the world, where white Europeans or white Americans have colonized and subjugated, appropriated raw materials, resources from the indigenous peoples and taken over their land. Israel is no different. But for Christians to justify this action of Israel is deeply, deeply troubling. It demonstrates that they have very little understanding of the scriptures, of the Christian faith. They're clearly not following in the footsteps of Jesus. How do we understand it? How do we explain it? Well, they're basically making a number of fundamental mistakes. They are equating Israel and the Jewish people in the Bible, in the Old Testament, with racial definitions rather than spiritual. What I mean by that is they assume Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, 12 tribes of Israel. The 12 tribes were ethnically pure all the way through the Old Testament. They are the Jews, they are Israel. And today, Israel, the people of Israel, are the direct descendants of those 12 tribes. That is not taught in the Bible. The people of God, Israel, the Jewish people in the Hebrew scriptures were made up of many nationalities, made up of many races. The Bible says that. Esther 8 verse 17 says, and many people of other nationalities became Jews. Now, if many people of other nationalities became Jews, the term Jew was no longer synonymous with tracing your family tree back to one of the 12 tribes of Israel. So it's no different from the New Testament, where the people of God is made up of many nationalities. Your identification with God and being a member of the people of God is on the basis of faith, not race. So that's one of the fundamental errors which Christian Zionists make. They associate Israel today with Israel in the Old Testament, and they associate Israel of the Bible with ethnic identification, and that's not taught in the Bible. What they do as a consequence of that is they idolize Israel today. They put Israel on a pedestal. They are God's chosen people, and therefore we treat them differently from other nationalities, other peoples. They elevate Israel and they demonize the Palestinians. The Palestinians are the Philistines. The Philistines were the enemies of the Jews. Therefore, that conflict is continuing today. The danger with idolizing people is that you romanticize them and it blurs one's ethical values and the way one views other people. So it's a shallow theology, and it's a dangerous theology as well. Christian Zionism is associated with a very apocalyptic, pessimistic, confrontational view of the future. It's synonymous with what we would call Armageddon theology. The idea there's going to be a final battle, and if we're on God's side, we'll be on Israel's side, and those countries that oppose Israel today are on Satan's side. And this final battle will take place in the Middle East. And again, what it does is it leads to a very dualistic view of the world, the good guys and the bad guys. With God on our side, we can justify our behavior, and we can demonize and punish and ethnically cleanse those deemed to be the enemy. I'll give you one example. In the media today, they were publicizing the fact that the Israeli authorities have rejected the allegations made after October the 7th, 2023, when it was alleged that people in Gaza, the men in Gaza, were breaking out and raping Israeli women. You know, it was part of the propaganda to justify the destruction of Gaza. That story has been repudiated now, but you think, well, it's a bit late. It's just one example of the kind of story that was used to justify the killing of Palestinians. It deflects attention. It's also linked to a theology called the prosperity gospel. The idea that God will bless people materially if they bless Israel. It goes back to a promise God made to Abraham: I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. All nations on earth will be blessed through you. But it was a promise made to Abraham, not to Israel, not to the Jewish people, and certainly not to Israel today. The promises God made to Abraham, we know from the Bible, were fulfilled in Jesus, not in Israel. They are fulfilled in Jesus and those who recognize Jesus as the Messiah. But that's how evangelicals particularly justify their support for Israel. It's based on a shallow theology and a misunderstanding of Scripture and an idolizing of Israel today.
It seems that in some way the shallow, misguided theology of Zionism, and the Christian Zionism in particular, has led some people, some centers of power, in giving you a hard time too. You have been falsely accused of anti-Semitism by some Zionist lobby groups that have for years worked very hard trying to discredit you even with the leadership of your own church denomination, which you faithfully served for many years. Would you like to share your experience with us?
I've shared with you about what happened to Jerry McCorbin as a political leader, David Miller as an academic. My journey has been very similar. My interest in the subject as a young Christian came about because I wanted to find out more about the land where Jesus lived and worked, the Holy Land, Israel, Palestine. And I was raised on a Christian Zionist theology as a young Christian. And that gave me a motivation to unpack that theology and visit the land. And there I saw the reality of apartheid. I saw the reality of the oppression of the Palestinians and the irony that the Christian church typically supported Israel and not the Christians in Palestine. They supported a secular state against their brothers and sisters in Palestine. And that deeply troubled me. And that's why I did my PhD examining Christian Zionism and began to unpack the theology of Christian Zionism in my second book, Zionist Christian Soldiers. And it was because I was challenging the, if you like, the superficial nature of Christian Zionism, its unbiblical nature, its racist theology, that I came, if you like, onto the radar of Christian Zionists, particularly Messianic Jews, a small group of Messianic Jews who clearly felt threatened, who felt exposed, that I'd taken their baby away from them. I'd cut the umbilical cord between the Bible and Zionism. And they began to target me about 18 years ago. They set up a website called Seismic Shock. It was meant to play on my name, Sizer, seismic, earthquake, shock. Anonymous articles written about me alleging that I associated with the Holocaust deniers, with anti-Semites. The police got involved. They supported me. They identified one of the individuals who was responsible for this nasty stuff. And ironically, in the end, he apologized. I have a letter from him explaining that he recognized what he was doing was wrong and wanted my forgiveness. But this group persisted in targeting me, making complaints to the Church of England. And in the end, it led to a tribunal. Took 4 years. And in the end, the Church of England, 4 individuals representing the Church of England who did not know me, who were appointed to investigate the allegations. The investigation examined 12 instances where I was accused of anti-Semitism. 11 of the 12 were dismissed. The one that was deemed an example of anti-Semitic behavior was the fact that I had posted on Facebook an article about 9/11 and the allegation that Israel was complicit in some way. It was on my website for 4 days. I put it on my Facebook, I put it up there for debate. I did not indicate I agreed with the article, disagree with it. I was inviting debate, as we often do on social media. I found this article, what do you think? But it was deemed anti-Semitic. It had actually been raised 4 years earlier, and I'd apologized, taken it down, apologized, and it was accepted. The apology was accepted, but it was resurrected for this tribunal that took place about 6 or 7 years after. And it was deemed as evidence of anti-Semitism. And as a result of that, I'd already retired, so I was not employed by the Church of England, but they took away my right to take services in Anglican churches as a retired priest. Not exactly something that I would want to do anyway in my retirement, but it was the most that they could do. Ironically, they didn't provide a single sentence of mine from all of my sermons, all of my articles. They couldn't find a single sentence that they deemed anti-Semitic. nothing I'd ever said, nothing I'd ever written, and they didn't present a single witness accusing me of anti-Semitism. Not a single witness and not a single sentence. On my side, I had over 50 academics, bishops, clergy, rabbis, imams, politicians defending me, repudiating the allegations. Most of those who came and gave eyewitness testimony were Jews who supported me, but their testimony was not taken seriously, it was not accepted. And the irony is that as the tribunal was being put in motion, we insisted, my side insisted, I insisted that anti-Semitism be defined. The Board of Deputies who brought the complaint against me said it wasn't necessary. See, again, they wanted to keep it fuzzy, cloudy, ambiguous. I said, no, it's got to be defined. And the tribunal agreed that we would have to have a definition, and could we agree on an expert witness who would define anti-Semitism for us? And we proposed the author of the IHRA working definition. They rejected him because they knew that he repudiated its use as a legal definition. Isn't it ironic that they were using the IHRA definition, but they wouldn't allow the author, the originator, to speak and define anti-Semitism because they knew he would not agree with them. So we ended up with one expert witness each. I had Anthony Lerman, who's a leading international expert on anti-Semitism. They chose a bishop who, under cross-examination, admitted he wasn't an expert on anti-Semitism. So it was a charade in terms of the process that was undertaken. And at the end of the day, the expert witness on anti-Semitism, Anthony Lerman, he was appalled at the outcome of the tribunal. He said this disgraceful miscarriage of justice against someone who has never uttered a word of hate against Jews will be a permanent stain on the Church of England and Board of Deputies. And my barrister, a leading legal expert who represented me, said it is significant that not one word or statement from Dr. Sizer has been shown to be anti-Semitic. There are none. So it's a classic example, I was a classic example, if you like, of the use of an ambiguous, indefinite definition. The IHRA working definition was used against me without witnesses, without clear definition, about a post I put on for 4 days that I hadn't necessarily agreed with. That was sufficient basis to silence me. I don't take it personally. My observation is that the strategy used against Jeremy Corbyn, against David Miller, against myself, and many, many others follows a very clear pattern. First, it's intimidate. They will intimidate you by phone calls, by emails, by articles about you, criticizing you, and the objective is to shut you up, put your head down under the wall and stop talking about Israel. If intimidation doesn't work, they move to the second level of their strategy, which is to isolate you. It's like if you've got an infectious disease, you are isolated to stop you infecting other people. And they do the same with your views. They see your views as infectious. If they can't intimidate you, they will intimidate others to isolate you. So you'll be invited to speak at a conference. They'll target the conference organizers to have you disinvited. Your PhD has been accepted by the university. They'll target the university to have your PhD revoked. That's the strategy they use. Intimidate, isolate, and if they can't isolate you, they go to the third level, which is incriminate. they'll try and use the law against you. They will accuse you of Holocaust denial, associating with terrorists, sympathy for terrorists, or anti-Semitism. So it's intimidate, isolate, incriminate. And where none of those three work, they move to the fourth level, which is to liquidate. I couldn't find another I, but liquidate will do, or assassinate. And in the last year, we have seen how Israel has assassinated political leaders, military leaders, medics, scientists, anyone they deem as a threat to the Zionist agenda. So it's a fourfold strategy: intimidate, isolate, incriminate, liquidate. That's the strategy they use, and that's why we must be aware of how threatened they must be to go to such lengths to silence criticism of Israel.
I would like to ask you now directly to give us an advice. What shall we do when we are being gaslighted or accused of anti-Semitism, when we disagree with the ongoing genocide and war crimes committed by Israel, and when we empathize with the suffering of the Palestinian people in Gaza and the West Bank, and the tragedy doesn't actually end only there? How do we stay strong? How do we stay focused? How do we stay unafraid? How do we not let ourselves be intimidated? How do we remain proactive in our commitment to justice, which has really not been forthcoming, neither from Israel, neither from the United States of America, neither from Britain, and neither in any meaningful way from the institutions of power in the West? What would be your advice?
I think there are 5 ways I believe we can constructively, proactively respond both to anti-Semitism and what we see happening in Palestine, but in other countries as well, where genocide is occurring, where prejudice, racism, hostility is a dominant factor. The first, most important, is we must repudiate all forms of racism, unequivocally, including anti-Semitism. No exceptions. We must secondly repudiate the small minority of anti-Semites using the Palestinian cause for their own agenda. There are a few, but not many. Thirdly, we should cooperate with Jewish organizations committed to both repudiating anti-Semitism and repudiating Zionism. For example, Jewish Voice for Peace, JVP, Jews for Justice for Palestinians, JFJFP, the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions, that's ICAD. Natura Carta is an Orthodox Jewish anti-Zionist movement. The Women in Black. There are many Jewish organizations that are repudiating both anti-Semitism and Zionism, and we need to work hand in hand with them. We must remain determined to hold Israel accountable to international law for its racist, genocidal policies toward Palestinians. And the best way to do that is to engage in BDS, boycotts, divestments, and sanctions. Sanctions we have to leave to governments. But if we sanction Russia for its actions in Ukraine, we must sanction Israel for its actions in Gaza. We as individuals can boycott Israeli goods, boycott goods that are produced by Western companies that are the profits go to the settlements or the products are sold in the settlements. Divestment. If we have access to investment funds, make sure that they are not being used to make profits. Those investments are not invested in companies that are profiting from the occupation. Weapons companies, for example. So remain determined to hold Israel accountable. Support the ICJ and the ICC, the International Criminal Court, the International Court of Justice investigating genocide in Gaza, investigating war crimes by Israeli military and political leaders. And then finally, continue to draw parallels between Zionist settler colonialism with the treatment of Native Americans in the United States, with blacks in South Africa, Aborigines in Australia, for example, wherever indigenous peoples have been persecuted, demonized, marginalized, suppressed, oppressed, or exterminated. We must continue to speak out against such injustice, but also draw parallels with what Israel is doing in the occupied Palestinian territories and especially in Gaza. Those are 5 ways we can repudiate anti-Semitism, but also speak out and stand up against what's happening in Palestine today.
Reverend Stephen Sizer, thank you very much. You have left us with much to think about. And my friends, thank you for following us and being with us. And I would really like to encourage you to spread the word. Make this channel known within the circle of your friends. Start by basically doing a very simple thing, by liking us and by subscribing to this channel, and also spreading the word in the circle of your friends. Let them know we are here and we are leading here some serious conversations from the platform of faith, addressing the issues of the days and times we live in. And I'm displaying right now again a picture of Reverend Stephen Sizer with his 2 books, which I would like to encourage you to look for those books. Thank you, Reverend Sizer, again. Thank you, all of you, my friends, for watching with us. Spread the word, and we will be, God willing, meeting again very soon.